Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 1472.
You always have to be winning races.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. I am revved up and so excited to share with you today a very special guest, Colin Braun. Colin is a sports car racer who for more than 25 years has been on the track. He grew up in a racing family. In fact, his father, Jeff Braun, has been a guest here on Cars Yeah twice. He was on just a few days ago. Colin's sports car career includes wins at the Rolex 24, the 12 Hours of Sebring, and 6 hours of Watkins Glen events. At just 16 years old, he made his racing debut at the Rolex 24-hour race in Daytona, and he was the youngest driver ever to place on the podium at the 24-hour of Le Mans, finishing second. Incredible. He's run oval racing with NASCAR, where he is credited with the fastest lap around the Daytona International Speedway. Hold on to your seats at 222.971 miles per hour. Oh my gosh. Well, we'll be back in just a minute to introduce Colin, but first, a word from our valued sponsors that make Cars Yeah possible. Winter's here and things can get a little messy. Rain, snow, salt, mud, dirt, and everything Mother Nature comes up with can hurt the finishes of your vehicles, both inside and out. I'm not worried though, because I've used Covercraft car covers on my rides since 1975. Today, Covercraft offers you a total solution to vehicle protection. They make the best fitting, finest made car covers in the world and offer a wide variety of materials, colors, and options that protect your paint and the interior too. Live where it's sunny all the time? Lucky. Covercraft dash covers and sunscreens are the best. Got pets, messy kids, messy in-laws, or just messy friends? Covercraft seat covers are the perfect fit and the perfect solution for keeping your seats looking new. And don't forget their custom fit floor mats and trunk liners. They are a must-have for all your vehicles. Your cars, trucks, van, or whatever you drive will say thank you. And I've got a deal for you. During January 2020, you can get 10% off plus free shipping on all Covercraft products. That's right. Go to covercraft.com and use the code YEAH120. That's YEAH120 at checkout. That's covercraft.com and use the code YEAH120 at checkout. Hey, Cars Yeah race fans. Andy Colins, owner of Armadillo Racing, is a past guest here on Cars Yeah. Last year, I was honored to be a speaker at his high-performance racing seminar, and having attended, I can tell you it's an invaluable learning experience if you love to race. This year marks the 25th anniversary of Armadillo's high-performance racing seminars, and it takes place Saturday, February 8th in Tacoma, Washington. For your seminar fee, you'll spend a day with 4 of racing's premier professionals on how to improve your driving and much, much more. This year's outstanding speaker lineup include Jacques Delary, PhD, world-renowned high-performance driving and life coach, Jeff Braun, a race engineer with a history at Core Racing and IMSA, Ross Bentley, top driving coach, author of world-renowned Speed Secrets and a fellow podcaster, and Dan Davis, retired director of motorsports for Ford Motor Company. All of these incredible racing experts are past guests here on Cars Yeah. As an added bonus for Cars Yeah listeners, you'll get to join these speakers at the Friday night reception at the incredible LeMay Car Museum for free. That's right. It's a $50 value if you sign up by January 15th. What a deal. Go to Armadillo Racing's website and register. That's armadilloracing.com. Hey, Colin, welcome to Cars Yeah. Are you buckled up and ready for a fun ride?
Man, I sure am. I'm ready to go.
All right. How many times have you been asked that question? Gosh, hundreds probably. Could you tell our listeners, before we jump into things here, just a little bit about yourself and your racing career?
Yeah, so I think the short version of the story, as you mentioned in the open, my dad being a race car engineer for many, many years, sort of grew up in the sport. He was working for IndyCar teams and NASCAR teams at the time I was, a little boy growing up, and so kind of got started into racing through the normal ways that many of us do, right? Through quarter midgets, through go-karts, kind of came up through the ranks that way. learned a tremendous amount from my dad on, how to be I guess a good student of the sport, and on the engineering side, how to make the go-karts and things like that go faster. So that was a big help. And then kind of just walked, up through the ranks, did some open wheel Formula car racing, and then did a bunch of sports car racing when I turned 16, and then about a 5 or 6 year stint in NASCAR after that, and then back to sports car racing for the last 7 or 8 years. So it's definitely been quite a ride. A lot of different places I've been able to race and experiences I've been able to have. So it's been fun.
Well, no doubt. Your dad is so great. He was a very early guest here on Cars Yeah. And I called him the other day to have him come back on the show because he's speaking at an event that I spoke at last year. It's Armadillo Racing. Andy Collins, who's another guest here, puts on an annual seminar for racers, mostly amateur racers. But I got to speak last year. Your dad's speaking this year, so I wanted to have him back. And I felt like I was talking to an old friend. You and your dad are such nice people and so easy to talk with. And I said, I got to get Colin on the show. And he goes, of course. So I'm so glad that he connected us here. Tell our listeners one little thing that most people maybe don't know about you.
Ooh, that's a good question. I think on the racing side of things, a lot of people, I think when they sit down and really think about me and my career, I think they remember this. But I think that right now people kind of remember me as either a sports car driver or a NASCAR driver. And I think a lot of folks don't remember the fact that, when I turned 16, I did 2 or so years in sports car racing in Grand Am at the time in Daytona prototype racing, and, won races and achieved a pretty high level of success before then going off to NASCAR for 5 years. And that went really well, and that was exciting in the NASCAR side of things. And then I kind of came back to sports car racing. But, people often are like, hey, it's great to see you in sports car racing. That's fantastic. And they sort of forget about the time when I was, 16, 17, 18 racing sports cars. So, or they remember my NASCAR career and they're kind of like, hey, I'm glad you found something new to do after NASCAR ended. And I'm like, hey, I just kind of came back to what I've
already been here, dude.
Yeah. So that's always an interesting one.
Well, it's incredible how young you got to start in running in some big, serious endurance type races. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I didn't know a lot about your history either until your dad started talking about you. He's very proud of you, by the way. Rightfully so. Yeah, absolutely. So must have been incredible growing up in a family with your dad and being around racing. And here we are 25 years later. I mean, you're doing it. So this is pretty cool. Well, I always like to start by asking my guests for a mantra, a saying, a slogan, a quote, some kind of inspirational thought. It's a nice way to get the tires smoking here on Cars Yeah. So, Colin, take the wheel.
Hey, I think mine is probably going to be one that might not click with everyone, but for me as a racer and a race car driver, it certainly clicks. And that is you always have to be winning races. And that's kind of been my mantra through growing up as a little kid, and then kind of that tough time to try to find, rides in professional racing, and then trying to make a living doing this. And, people are always asking me, how do you decide where to go race or what to go do? And my thing has always been, picking opportunities that I feel like give me a chance to go and win races. And so that's sort of been what I've always lived by. And that's kind of definitely my biggest mantra that I always remind myself of.
Yeah, most people will go, well, duh, win races. Isn't that the whole idea? But it's not that easy. I mean, there's a lot of competition out there. There's so many racing programs out there. And I think you're right. Picking the right place to be at the right time that suits your driving skill, provides you with the right teammates. And of course, racing is all about teammates. So you've obviously done a nice job with your selection process.
Well, yeah, it's not always easy, right? I mean, you've got, a couple different opportunities laid out, and you're like, should I go this path or that path or this path or this opportunity? And, that mantra always rings in my head of, hey, I pick the opportunity that I feel like gives me the best chance to win races, regardless of whether it's, down this side of the road or that side of the road, right? And so it's that's kind of what I've always lived by, and certainly gotten me to where I am now. But that's
great.
Always challenging opportunities to try to make the right choice.
No doubt. You picked a tough career path, that's for sure. Well, let's talk about that career path. We're in the new decade here. I can't believe it's 2020. That's a little frightening how fast life is spinning by. But you're a guy that's used to fast speeds. Tell us what you have planned for this new year. What are you going to be racing? Who are you going to be racing with? What's the team you're with? And what has you excited and fired up about this new season?
Yeah, I'm definitely ready to kind of get this season kicked off. We're starting out here in not too long at the Daytona 24-hour Rolex event. This is going to be my 16th straight year racing in that race. So certainly excited about that.
16 years? Oh my gosh, it's incredible. You must know it like the back of your hand.
Well, when you've done it every year since you've turned 16, you certainly start to get an understanding of, where the little nuances of that racetrack are for sure. But yeah, it's going to be fun. I can't wait.
And what are you going to be driving? What team are you with?
I'm going to be driving for a kind of a team probably a bit more known in Europe. They're called Dragon Speed Racing, and they're a great team in Europe. They've done a lot of things, racing at Le Mans, racing in quite a lot of endurance races in Europe, and they've done a few things over here in the U.S. And so they decided to kind of come over this year, try to tackle Daytona, and they needed someone with some Daytona experience, and so they said, hey, why don't you come over and be part of this with us?
Yeah, this guy. What kind of car are you going to be driving?
It's a LMP2 car, so the real fancy, swoopy, prototype-looking car, like an Indy car with bodywork, basically. So they're a lot of fun to drive, incredibly fun.
I love those cars. I think they're so cool. They're just fun to watch, and the variety of the cars and how that whole series has evolved, especially over the last 10 years in some of the different fuel delivery systems and types of cars. And it's really fascinating to me because the LMP group seems like it's a lot of engineers and creative people coming together it kind of reminds me, I'm trying to think here, the old days of Can-Am almost. And maybe, because they had to come up with some really creative different things. And you look at those old Can-Am cars and they were all kind of the same, but different. And the LMP2 group, I know that regulations are so much more strict now, but I kind of feel the same way. Would you agree with me, or am I completely off the track here?
No, I totally agree. I mean, it's incredible what the designers and builders of these cars have done. I mean, the level of performance that they're able to achieve and, just the reliability that they're able to achieve is incredible. I mean, you look at, what guys used to talk about at Daytona and these long endurance races where they said, hey, we got to go out there, we got to save the car, be easy on the brakes, be easy on the gearbox, things like that. And that was how you got to the end of these long races where, now for the last, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years, it's just flat out every single lap. There's no saving brakes. There's no saving transmissions. I mean, you're flat out as fast as you can drive those cars every single lap. And it's not one of those things where you go, well, I hope we can get to the end. I mean, the expectation is for every team that, we have a prepared car and a reliable car, and we're going to get to the end of the race, barring crashing into somebody or some, freaky kind of mechanical issue. But
we're running out of fuel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Ouch.
It's just incredible how well the guys have designed and built these cars in today's times. It's just, you're just flat out every lap. And I think that it's a big testament to sort of the auto industry and just the way that, people work on and think about designing and building these cars.
I've got to think when you're in a race back in the older days where you had to preserve the car, that added a whole nother element to the race that you had to be concerned with and think about. It's fascinating now that you don't have to think about that, but at the same time, you got to be spot on lap after lap after lap. So there's not that there was resting before, but when you had to kind of throttle back and keep the revs down, a little bit of a rest of thought in your mind. But now, how do you keep that intensity of focus? I just find it fascinating how you could keep that focus for so long, going flat out for so long. Do you really get into some other kind of vibe or some kind of thought process, or is it just like, I won't say balls to the wall, but I'll say, just here we go. You just got to hang on. I can't imagine that.
No, it's a really good question, Mark. And certainly I think the difference of, what it took to be a good endurance racing driver, 20, 30 years ago to what it takes to be a good endurance racing driver today is, definitely different. I mean, the focus for those guys back in the day was trying to get to the end of the race, being easy on everything. And then, at the end of the race, if it came down to it, they could really push and go hard. But more often than not, those guys were really more managing the car than they were just flat out every lap. And now, as we talked about earlier, it's pivoted to just focused on as many fast laps as you can go. And so I think it takes a little bit different, skill set and technique, but no harder or easier than what it was many years ago. But the ability to push yourself and push the car hard for, as long as we do when you make these long races with the stints and the way that we kind of set the drive times up and the lineups up, it's definitely mentally tiring. I think that's probably the one thing that is the most tough in these long races. We all at the level that we're at have personal trainers and work out and work on the physical side of being tough. And we try to do what we can to be mentally prepared and tough, but there's just nothing like, getting out there and having a 2 or 3 hour long stint where you're working hard the whole time. And then you get a few hours off and you got to go do it again and again and again. And that just, wears you mentally out for sure.
Yeah, I would imagine as much physical training as mental training has to be done. When you think about in race car drivers nowadays, when you go back to the old days, and I'm talking about when I was a kid, the 60s or even the 70s, when drivers just kind of showed up, some of them were kind of playboys, if you will, and they jumped in a car and raced and went away. Now there's all these different aspects of training, like you said, mental training, physical training. There's dealing with the sponsors. There's appearances, being on podcasts. What is when you look at all the parts of your career as a race car driver, what is the favorite part of your career in your business?
Well, I think for me in my business, what I enjoy the most is the time when I get to start the engine and put it in gear and drive off and go drive, right? I mean, I love driving the race car. That's the fun part for me, pushing it to the edge, feeling what it does, and then, thinking about how I can drive a little different or do this a little different with my hands and my feet to make the car go fast. That's, for me, what I love. Obviously, I enjoy doing the media side of things, love being on podcasts, love doing, some of those things. But the real passion for me is that visceral driving experience. That's what hooked me in when I was 3 or 4 years old, driving the go-kart around the backyard was just the fun of driving a machine fast and on the edge. So for me, that's definitely my favorite part.
Well, I would guess so. Sometimes I think that's a silly question for me to ask a race car driver, but you never know what you're going to get here on Cars Yeah. Let's take a short break and say thank you to our sponsors, and we'll be right back. Edelbrock has been the name in automotive performance since 1938. Edelbrock designs and builds thousands of the finest automotive performance products right here in the USA for both street and track. From their AVS2 carburetors to V6 superchargers, if it's more power you crave, Edelbrock delivers. Let's talk superchargers. Whether it's an application-specific system or a universal fit, their precision-made assemblies come in multiple stages for a wide variety of makes and models. Their V6 superchargers are dyno-tested and ensure the perfect fit and maximum horsepower torque, plus added boost. You get huge power gains. I mean huge power gains. Quality construction you can trust and backed by decades of knowledge. Edelbrock is a brand that provides you with proven performance. And I've got a deal for you. This January 2020, you can get 10% off if you use the code CARSYEAH at checkout. Just go to edelbrock.com and use CARSYEAH, all one word, at checkout and get 10% off. Tell them Mark at Cars Yeah sent you. That's edelbrock.com, checkout code CARSYEAH for your 10% off. My favorite collector car magazine is Keith Martin's Sports Car Market. I've been a subscriber for decades. Sports Car Market is the Wall Street Journal for the enthusiast and the collector. It's your monthly must-read whether you dream of owning a collector car, have 2 cars, or 200. Sports Car Market has been around for 31 years, and it's filled with valuable articles, intelligent write-ups, and the latest auction sales. Go to sportscarmarket.com and subscribe today. Plus, you'll get the exclusive SCM guide to restoration shops included for free. At checkout, use the code CARSYEah and receive a 50% discount on your digital subscription. It's an exclusive offer from me here at Cars Yeah. I'm Mark Green, and I love Sports Car Market Magazine. Are you looking for a way to get your products or services into the ears of thousands of automotive enthusiasts around the globe? I can help. This is Mark Green here at Cars Yeah, and I'd be honored to be an influencer and ambassador for your brand in a unique and personal way. 5 days a week, thousands of subscribers and listeners enjoy the Cars Yeah podcast and website. Contact me today and I'll show you how at mark@carsyeah.com or connect with me through the Cars Yeah website at carsyeah.com. All right, Colin, we are back, and I have another, maybe it's a silly question. I always like to ask my guests to share a huge challenge or a big failure. Now, I kind of grin a little bit when I say that or ask that to a racer, because you have chosen a career that is ups and downs. One weekend you're a champion, the next you're a chump. I mean, it's just, I can't even imagine. It's like a professional sports person. You know, you're champions one week and the next week you can't make a field goal. So tell us about a big challenge. Take us there, a big failure that you faced. But more importantly, the reason I asked this question is, how did that experience help you grow? What did you learn from it? And how did it help you gain even more momentum as you move forward in your racing career?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's one that, I definitely have a lot of time to talk about, right? Because I think, as you pointed out, in racing and in this sport, and particularly being, I think, a driver, you definitely have quite a lot of ups and downs. And far too often, I've always said that I think race car drivers get way, way too much credit when things go good and they have a great race. And then on the flip side of that, I think they get way too much heat when things go not as well as they should, right? I mean, it's kind of either you're a hero or a zero in this business. But,
a champ or a chump.
Comes with the territory.
Like I said.
It's exactly true. It's so true. I would say for me, when I first got into doing the NASCAR stuff, I kind of came off being really successful and doing a lot of good things in Grand Am and those Daytona prototype cars. I got hired by Ford basically to be a driver development driver for them. And they sort of put me with Roush Fenway to go and do the early onset of my NASCAR career. So they took me and I did some ARCA races and some truck races, and that it was all kind of going as it should, right? Learning a lot. I've never really driven on any oval tracks before. So figuring out how to race and race wheel to wheel and what the aerodynamics do when you're around different cars, all those kind of things were things I was learning rapidly as I was kind of getting more experience. And so that all kind of happened here, the last half of the year. And that set me up to go do a full-time season of truck racing the following year. I was going to be basically taking over Mark Martin's truck ride at Roush. And so he was really famous guy at the time, and the team had done really well with Mark driving. And so definitely some big shoes to fill for me. And the first year that I got in there, still with pretty darn limited experience, we had some great races where it went really well. We also had some races where, I just made mistakes trying to learn and try to figure out how to be competitive, and definitely, kind of bounced around from getting pushed around by everyone else that I was racing with to starting.
Hey, well, it's NASCAR, right?
It is.
A lot of pushing going on there.
A lot. And, then started to beat back a little bit and, nearly had some fights on pit road and things like this. It just kind of, was an exciting and interesting time, to say the least. But those were definitely tough times, getting through some of those events and learning, right? I mean, you're out there trying to do what you can. You get into an accident, you crash a truck, you see the guys the next week down working in the shop, cutting the thing apart, trying to, fix it, put it back together. And there was definitely times, that was pretty challenging. And I think that made me kind of look at the whole sport as a whole and look at, hey, we're all in this trying to get, better together. And these guys that are working hard back at the shop are like, hey, you're going to figure this out. It's going to click. You're fast. We don't mind, working on these things, putting them back together. And they kept doing it. And so the next year we had a really good year. I think I had about 10 or 15 top 5 finishes. We won a couple races, had some poles. It was super successful, really good year. And so, in a way that kind of just, again, proved to me that, hey, you keep your head down, you keep, kind of working on things and eventually it'll click. It'll come to you and you'll have good success. So that was definitely probably the lowest point, but on the flip side, the following year, one of the highest points.
Yeah, great learning lessons. Never, ever give up. That's the key. Absolutely. Well, let's have a little bit of fun and talk about, and I ask my guests typically to share their first really special vehicle. I'll let you decide which way you want to go here. Your first special street vehicle or the first race car you crawled in and said, I made it. Can't believe I'm here.
That's a good question. I think the first special vehicle was probably, and this is going to sound strange for sure, but I got hired by Ford at 16, basically to be a Ford factory driver, and so they were providing me with a company car to use every year. So, as weird as it is, I never really had to buy a street car.
Wow.
When I was 16, 17, 18, because I had a car from Ford.
How cool is that?
Yeah, crazy. And so then I ended up getting up to racing in the NASCAR Xfinity series, and I needed to go buy a motorhome. And so turns out the very first car that I ever technically bought was, a 45-foot long motorhome. And that was my first street car, basically, was this
That's
motorhome.
Hilarious. I mean, that's a pretty unique answer for this question. I've heard some funny answers, but that one, I think, is the first special vehicle was a motorhome. But you think about it, I mean, race car drivers, they need motorhomes. I mean, they've got to be, in fact, your dad, when he called in, I believe he was at Daytona in a motorhome when he called in the other day from his show. So, wow, that's pretty cool. So what was your first car at 16 that Ford gave you?
My first car was a pickup truck. I was born and raised in Texas, and Ford said, "Hey, whatever you want, let us know, and we'll get it for you." And so for me, I mean, there's nothing better than having a Ford pickup truck when you're a Texas guy.
Yeah, no doubt. My dad's originally from Texas. My grandparents, so yeah, I understand. When I was a kid, we'd go visit my grandparents' farm, and I remember my cousins all had pickups. I grew up in Southern California, so I had a Carmen Ghia.
Nice.
Kind of classic. But my cousins all had trucks, and my one cousin had a truck with he had shot a very large rattlesnake and skinned it and glued the skin down the hood of his truck like a racing stripe, a Diamondback racing stripe. So, yeehaw, Texas, go Texas.
Absolutely. It's funny you've got that Carmen Ghia. I have a 1972 Volkswagen Beetle that I restored.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, familiar with that whole brand for sure.
It's pretty funny to think a race car driver like you, Colin, driving an old Beetle. I mean, that's got to put you in a different mindset when you get behind the wheel with that thing.
It sure does. It's fun, though. I mean, those kind of cars built back in those days, gave such a different experience than what you have driving, any modern day kind of luxury vehicle. So I love that, that feeling and just kind of the rawness of driving, cars from back in those days. A lot of fun.
Yeah. And the great thing about vintage cars too is that you get a different mindset. The vintage cars I've always had, I kind of put my string back gloves on. You kind of slow everything down. It's really kind of refreshing. And I mean, you're a guy who goes fast on the track. You don't need to go fast on the streets. So it's got to be a different mindset when you crawl into that VW. Well, here's a very introspective question to get into your mindset. If you woke up tomorrow and Colin was a vehicle, any kind of vehicle in the world, not what you want to be, but how you perceive yourself as a vehicle, could be a street car, race car, maybe it's a motorcycle. I don't know. What would Colin Braun be and why?
That's a good question, and I've thought about how to frame up answering that. And I would have to say, I think if I was anything, I would be like a modern day rally car, just because the rally cars to me are so impressive. They can do so many different things, right? They can be fast in the snow, on the dirt, on the pavement, and they're really, really good all around cars. And so when I look at, kind of myself and my career, I look at all the different things that I've driven and had opportunities to drive and the diversity that I've been exposed to. And I think that kind of aligns well with what a rally car would be if I was a car.
Very cool answer. Now, rally racers. Now, there is a crazy group of people. I tell you, the only other thing that gives me more anxiety than watching rally racing from an in-car cockpit shot is MotoGP. Those
sure.
guys. Oh my gosh. Have you ever had any inclination to go rally racing?
Well, I would love to go rally racing. I did a couple seasons of global rallycross, which is the kind of closed course track style deal where we had some jumps and some dirt sections, but never really raced, through the woods and through the trees and all that.
Oh,
Man,
yeah.
It sure looks like fun.
Oh my gosh, it scares me to death. You're a much braver guy than me, but it's fun to watch, that's for sure. All right, Colin, we are entering the last lap. I'm going to fire off a series of questions and ask you to give me some quick blips of that modern day rally car throttle. So here we go. What's one of your personal habits you believe has contributed to your racing successes over the years?
I think probably my attention to detail, right? I think just being, kind of always focused on all the little details has really helped me in my racing for sure.
Absolutely. If I could wave a magic wand and arrange for you to sit down and have a drink or a meal with anyone in the racing industry, living or deceased, who would that individual be?
I think for me, that's an easy one. I was always a really big fan of Ayrton Senna growing up as a little kid.
Yeah.
And, just to be able to sit down with him and, kind of learn his perspective and some of the things that made him who he was would be pretty special.
My regular listeners are going to hear this again. I say it a lot, but Senna's one of my guys that I love that guy. He was great. In fact, I have one of his quotes in the back of my business cards. And his quote is, "The past is just data. I only see the future." And I think it's such a great metaphorical quote for a lot of things in life, especially racing. I did some vintage racing, and I remember in that radio in my ear, head up, look down the track, look way ahead. That's the way we should be living our life, looking way ahead as well. And for Senna, he didn't seem to dwell much on the past. He just used that as information to move forward into the future. So it brings a smile on my face. The great Ayrton Senna for sure. How about the best automotive or racing advice you've ever received from someone else?
Ooh, I think this one is going to be probably a bit too racing specific, but
That's
sort
okay.
of that concept of the corner exit of most corners is really, really important. The corner entry, braking super late, rolling a lot of, mid corner speed through the corner, not as important probably as that really good early throttle application on the exit. And so I think that's kind of the one thing that's always stuck with me. And I've definitely, kind of built a whole mindset around that concept.
That whole concept still comes to my mind. I was racing a 1960 Lotus Formula Junior, and very much a novice here. I was running with the Sovereign group, and I just didn't feel like I was doing very well. And I talked to Dick Buckingham, who used to run our group here, and that was the advice he gave me. He goes, Mark, I'm watching you. You can get on the gas a lot faster as you come out of the corners. Now, that car's a very momentum car. It's very small engine, doesn't go real fast. It drifts through the corners. But he said, do this as you're going through the corner. Just think about, okay, in a second or two, I'm going to get on the gas. Get on it the minute you think about it. And,
right.
And I did it, and all of a sudden I shaved like a second and a half of my lap time. I'm like, whoa, that worked. That's pretty cool. So even when I'm driving on a street now, in fact, last night I had to drive up to give a keynote speech up in at the Columbia Winery, and it was dark, and it was late, and it was raining, and I was going through a corner, and his voice kind of came into my head. Okay, you can get on the gas a little faster here. So great. Yeah, get on the gas faster. Another great metaphor for life. Move a little quicker. Get on those ideas you have a little bit faster.
Absolutely.
Don't let them linger. Very, very cool. Now, how about a resource? Is there a resource that's a go-to for you out there that you'd like to share with our listeners? Maybe a website, an app, a supplier, person? I don't know.
Well, for me, I think a fellow named Ross Bentley, who's kind of a world-renowned driver coach and just sort of the guy who literally wrote the book on how to go fast as a race car driver, was a huge influence in my life, certainly growing up, racing go-karts and doing all those things. And so for me, Ross is obviously a great personal friend, and I lean on him quite a lot personally, but with his Speed Secrets, websites and webinars and all the different things that Ross does to create, kind of racing focused and performance driving focused content, that's something I lean on all the time for sure.
Yeah, Ross is awesome. He was a very early guest here on Cars Yeah. Coincidentally, I had him back on the show just last week. In fact, he's going to be speaking with your dad at Andy Collins' event that we talked a little bit about, Armadillo Racing Seminar, annual seminar. So in their 25th year, it's going to be here in Tacoma on the 8th of February, I believe. You can go to the website, Armadillo Racing, and learn about that. But Ross is great, and he's another guy like your dad. When he called back, I said, hey, Ross, when were you on the show before? And he goes, I don't know, a few years ago. I said, no, it was 5 years ago. And he said, what? Now, he lives very close to me here in the Pacific Northwest, and I just felt like I was talking to a friend again. But when I started vintage racing, a friend gave me his Speed Secrets books, and they really helped me a lot. I mean, he's just an incredible guy. So I would encourage listeners out there, if you like racing, even if you just do weekend stuff with your club, you're on a track or autocross, whatever, you can subscribe to Ross's Speed Secrets. He comes out with a great email every week where he talks about things about racing and so forth. It's really worth the minimal cost to get that. Ross is a great guy. So glad you mentioned him. How about a book, Colin? Is there a book that you've read that you think our listeners would enjoy?
This is kind of going back to the last question. For me, I love reading, Ross's books. I think they're really helpful and give great advice. I think the other kind of funny part of this is I didn't know a whole lot about this book. I was in a bookstore looking through, popular books at the time, came across the Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth Stein, and thought, hey, this has got to be a great book. Why not? Interesting that a book about how to race in the rain is like on the New York Times bestseller list, but whatever, I'll grab it. And so anyway, obviously quite not a book about racing in the rain, but nonetheless, a really good, interesting book and one of my favorites, kind of the ties of racing and a great story and animals. Who doesn't love dogs? So that's definitely one of my favorite books.
Yes, Garth is great. He lives up here in the Pacific Northwest where I live, and I had him on the show a few years ago. That is the most recommended book by far. That and A.J. Bames' Go Like Hell, which, of course, the new Ford versus Ferrari movie's out. But, of course, the Art of Racing in the Rain was made into a movie, and I saw that late last year. I thought the movie was fine, but nowhere near as good as the book. I mean, the
book's fantastic.
Goes into some great depth. And I always tell people, if you're going to read the book and you're going to be sitting on a plane or something, you better bring a tissue because you're going to have a few tears. It's really great. Make sure you get a copy of Garth Stein's, or the audiobook is another great way. The audiobook is great. The person that recorded that does an excellent job, and you can just put your earbuds in your ear, get on the treadmill, or go for a walk and enjoy the Art of Racing in the Rain. You can find all these great links on Colin's own show notes page on the Cars Yeah website. Just go to carsyeah.com, type in Colin, Colin Braun, and that page will pop up. We'll take another quick break with our advertisers and be right back. You take care of your cars, but who takes care of your investments? Tune-ups aren't just for engines. Updating your financial plan is important too. Your GPS may take you from A to B, but it won't help you on the road to financial freedom. For that, you need a good co-pilot and a very trusted advisor. Chris Kimball, CFP, is just the man for the job. He'll guide you down that road without driving you crazy. For over 25 years, Chris has helped people just like you and me with their financial planning and investments. With a master's degree in financial services, he is eminently qualified, and he's a car guy too. Learn more at chrisvkimball.com or call 866-ON-A-PLAN. Securities through Money Concepts Capital Corp. Member FINRA SIPC. CK Financial Services is not affiliated with Money Concepts Capital Corp. All right, Colin, we are back on It's Checkered Flag time. You've seen plenty of checkered flags in your life. This last question, though, can be a bit of a doozy. I'm going to buy you any cool collector car or vintage race car on the planet, but there are some rules to the game since I'm writing the check here. I'm like the sponsor. I got to dictate your life a little bit here. So you can't sell this vehicle to buy a bunch of other toys with or fund your racing career. You have to drive it. No garage queen. So if you're going to hang it on the wall, not interested. But it's the only cool collector car or vintage race car you can have in your garage. You need to choose wisely. So what's it going to be?
I think for me, that one's pretty easy. As a little kid, I remember fondly watching the movie Rain Man. I think that came out about the year that I was born, actually. So I probably was, checking it out when I was 5 or 6 with my parents. And I love the scene in the start of the movie where they're unloading the Lamborghinis off the boat and they're coming down. I kind of fell in love with like cool kind of Lamborghini Countach kind of cars then. So for me, that's always been a car that I just would love to have. I just remember that movie so fondly, and those cars just being so incredibly awe-inspiring. That was kind of the first sort of supercar, I guess, that I saw as a little kid or remember seeing as a little kid. And so for me, I'd just love to have one of those. That'd be pretty cool.
Well, I think so. Yeah, those are pretty neat. Now, do you like I'm trying to remember the movie, which model Lamborghini was being unloaded. Do you like the old, like the original Periscopo cars, or maybe a few years a little bit later into the evolution of the Countach?
Yeah, I was pretty sure those are, more like the LP 400s, LP 500s, those kind of things. So for me, I think maybe a little bit later. But, the Lamborghinis today, if I'm honest, aren't nearly as appealing to me as what, kind of those late 80s, early 90s Countaches were. I mean, just the shift gate, H pattern with the shift gate and everything in there, and just the noise that they made. I mean, very pretty cars.
Yeah, they are. They're awesome. Love to park one of those in your garage. Hey, what's the best way for our listeners to learn more about you and your racing career and follow along with what you're doing?
Yeah, I think the best places are probably social media for me. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, pretty much all with just my name as the handle, or my website, which is also just my name.com. So those are the best places to keep up with what's going on for sure.
Awesome. I'll make sure I put links to all those on Colin's show notes page here on Cars Yeah. Follow along with this guy. I mean, his career is amazing. What he's doing is so much fun. And now with social media, we can feel like we can be right there with you at the track if we're not fortunate enough to be watching you go around a track really fast. Colin, thanks for being so generous today with your time, your expertise, and for sharing your racing career with us. I'm so glad your dad connected me with you. Until you and I talk again, my friend, I'll see you down the road.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Hey, Mark Green here from Cars Yeah. Did you know you can now see me on the Cars Yeah TV show? It's a weekly visit to some of my past Cars Yeah podcast guests, and I take you along for the ride. You go behind the garage door and into their lives, their businesses, and you get to see what makes them successful. With tens of millions of viewers, Cars Yeah TV is making its mark. Cars Yeah TV is available on MAV TV and Lucas Oil Racing TV. You'll find MAV TV on Direct TV, Fubo TV, Fios by Verizon, or you can stream it through Lucas Oil Racing Television online. And they said I only had a face for podcasting.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.